So today I'm Eileen Nuffer, and today we're going to talk about communicating safely and successfully. So I read this great book called Crucial Conversations a couple years back, and when I looked at the Lead Like a Savior, I said, I need to pull that back out because it addresses a lot of what we're trying to do in leading like the Savior when it comes to communication. And it's an interesting book. There was a whole group of business people who got together and they said, we want to figure out what makes the best business person. And so they went to organizations and they asked people, who's the best in your organization? And then they looked, where do we get repeats? Where do we get 40 of the same name? You know, where are we getting the best and everyone knows it? Who isn't the boss? And then they went and they watched them. And they said, okay, how is this person different? And at first they looked like everyone else. And so it made it a little tricky. And then as they went to some various meetings at these organizations, all of a sudden they saw a difference pop out. And it popped out so big that they'd have people who came out afterwards who said, you see what he did in there? Do you see what she did in there? That's what makes them different. And they found out it was how they communicate. And so they studied that and wrote a book on it. So we're going to talk about what they learned and sort of tie in the Savior, because the Savior already knows all these things, as you might expect. So they call it crucial conversations, and they say these conversations are the hard conversations. They're the ones where you don't agree, or where there's strong emotions involved, and you know that the person may not want to hear what you have to say, or you're not sure you want to hear what they have to say, and where there's high stakes. You know, if you're a TGL and you're talking to somebody about their performance, they're wondering, is my job on the line? So high stakes is also going to bring that up. So as TGLs and OCRs, this is a large portion of our job. TGLs do performance discussions and performance reports. We do student grievances. We're kind of interacting with that. Sensitive instructor issues. Your instructor comes to you, I have this situation I didn't anticipate. What do I do? I have a student's giving me a hard time. So we have those as a TGL. And then as an OCR, when you're discussing changes with the other instructors, sometimes the opinions don't all match, but they all think that's what needs to happen. Or if you're going to the course lead and you say, we need to change this, it's not working, they don't always want to hear that. So that makes that a tough conversation. And then finding the ideal way to implement changes from course designers. My course designer's here. She's awesome. But what we found is if you communicate and say, how can this best be done? She often knows answers that we wouldn't have considered because she has that piece of the puzzle. And then also figuring out how to make discussed changes a reality. How many times have you gone in and talked about it? Yes, this needs to be a change. And then 6 months later, you're back having the same discussion. So these are the sorts of things that we want to figure out how to do. And in the book, they call this the fool's choice, but we tend to have an approach that we naturally take. We learn from a very young age. When these hard conversations come up, you go to fight or flight. So you either don't say anything because they're not going to want to hear it, or, and kind of rationalize that, maybe we can get away with not addressing that. Or the second choice, they need to know the truth. So I'm going to tell them, and they may not like me afterwards, and they may not like what I have to say, but the truth needs to be out there, right? We kind of go back and forth between those. And they call this the fool's choice because it's not just A or B. There's a C option. So I'm going to kind of challenge you here. When we look at those choices, we both see what's wrong with both of them. But we don't make choices generally without having something in it for us. There's a benefit. So instead of looking at the negative side of both of these, I want you to tell me what is the good part of it. So for choice one, when we choose to stay quiet, what's the benefit? What are we getting out of that that's good?
We haven't upset the individual.
Yeah, no fight. Didn't upset the individual. Yeah. Do we get anything else out of it?
You don't have a broken relationship with the person.
Perfect. Yeah, you're not ruining the relationship. And I know, me personally, I get to stay in my comfort zone. I don't have to go out and do things that are uncomfortable. Okay, what's the good thing about choice number two?
your obligation as a leader.
Yeah.
Choice 2 is it's my brand. I'm more of a,
Yeah.
I'm more of a choice
You're like,
taker.
I need to do this. I signed up to do this. I need to get it done and make sure they know, because if I don't say it, then it's my responsibility that I didn't say it. Okay? So the real thing, the choice C, is say the truth, but do it in a way that maintains the relationship and maintains safety for everyone. That's the choice C. That's what they found these people who were successful employees could do. And because they could do it, those things that the elephants in the room, things people were avoiding, got addressed, and got addressed right. And so the good changes happened and things moved forward. So Elder Neil L. Anderson said, God our Father and his Son Jesus Christ are beings of absolute, perfect, and complete honesty and truth. So I think sometimes when we're tempted to do choice 1, we need to remember they're able to share the truth. And when we're tempted to do choice 2, we need to remember they share the truth kindly and lovingly. So there is an option that's between these two. So when we have these conversations, we need to know, where do I begin? Where do I start? I know this needs to happen. I figured that out. Now what? So what we want to do is start with heart. What do we really want out of this conversation? Remember, you don't have to choose the fight or flight path. You can actually have something where you've got dialogue going on, where your end goal is focused on what you want to achieve, not being right, not being wrong, not confronting the person or avoiding the situation. But let's have the dialogue and get it on the table and figure out where you're coming from, where I'm coming from, and how we can achieve what needs to happen. And so when we're doing this, we have to move out of the fight or flight and into the frontal lobe. So how do you do that? Because chemically, you'll go to the panic mode when you're a little afraid of what you're going into. And they said what you do is you ask a complex question. Because you ask the complex question, and the blood has to go to the frontal lobe to figure out the solution. And so really simple questions that you can just keep on hand and always work are, what do I want for myself? What do I want for this person I'm carrying on the conversation with? And what do I want for our relationship when this is over? Because there's certain ways you'll act if you're considering those things. And then how would I behave if I really wanted these results? And then kind of do some introspection, me first, you after, sort of an approach. Remember, the only person you're going to control in that situation is yourself. And just accept that going in. I will do my best to communicate this the best I can. It may not change things, it might change things, but I will know that I've done the best I can for this other person. And then when you find yourself moving towards silence or violence in a conversation, because sometimes those moments happen, stop, pay attention to your motives, and ask yourself these same questions again. What do I want for the relationship? What am I trying to achieve for myself? What am I trying to achieve for the other person? Get back up in that frontal lobe so that you can shut down your panic mode. And then define that. What do I want? What do I not want? What will I not do if I want to achieve this? And then search for healthy options that lead to dialogue, and we'll talk about how to find those. So the ultimate preparation for these is really charity. I don't know how many of you guys listened to devotional last week, but he talked about how we can ask for spiritual gifts. And he encouraged us to ask for charity if we need it. If you have charity, it helps you look beyond yourself. This is the love of Christ. So President Henry B. Eyring said, I surely don't understand the meaning of the scriptural words, the pure love of Christ. But one meaning I do know is this. It is the gift we are promised when the atonement of Jesus Christ has worked in us. The gift is to want what he wants. When our love is the love he feels, it is pure because he is pure. This is the ultimate preparation for having these crucial conversations. When we go into it wanting what Christ wants, we will treat that person the way Christ would treat them. So the first thing we need to do after we've started with our heart is to then make it safe. And when we're making it safe, we want to see the person before the problem. Christ always saw the person first. And we need to do the same thing. And keep in mind, if you want results, if you're a results person, if you see the person first and maintain their respect, they are more likely to change. Because that is so important to them to be treated that way that they won't change until they know that you're about them. And you want results, so if you're about them, you get the results. So the best way to do that is have a mutual purpose with them. Figure out something that you both care about and that you both want. So for example, a course lead may not want to redesign something, but they want the students to do well. They want the online students to do as well as the on-campus students. You know, you can find things like that that is in their best interest that makes the investment they may not want to do seem like maybe it's a good idea. But make sure there's something in it for them, because if it isn't, you probably shouldn't be having this conversation. You need to figure out, you know, you're more or less using a person if there's nothing in it for them. But that what's in it for them might be very different than what's in it for you. So find that mutual purpose and establish it using conversation. Figure out what they really do want, what is valuable to them. And ask, do others believe that I care about their goals in this conversation? And do they trust my motives? If you don't really care about their goals, if you can't be trusted, then you've got to go back to heart. You got to start with heart and figure out how to get there, because you can't have a decent conversation with change unless those things are present, that you care about them and your motives are about them. And don't worry so much about being right, saving face, or winning. Those sorts of things are worldly standards that we have, and they get in the way. The natural man kind of gets in the way there. Are you maintaining respect? I love this quote from the book. Respect is like air. As long as it's present, nobody thinks about it. But if you take it away, it's all the people can think about. So you don't need to excuse their behavior when you are talking to them, but empathize with them. And then get their stories into the conversation. Understand where they're coming from so that they understand that you understand them, so that then they are open to listening about what you have to say. Understand that they do have strengths. I know sometimes we work with these instructors and we think, how could they miss doing this? But their strengths might be different than our strengths. And so we need to recognize that maybe we can teach them, but they probably also have something to teach us. And so if we see that I'm coming into this, I may not know their strengths, they may not know what I have to tell them, but we're going to find strengths in both places. This is from John 4:7-15. Christ knew these skills. So he comes to the woman at the well, and she says, "How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria?" For Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans. Does she feel safe? What are her safety issues? Can you spot them?
She's confused. He's challenging cultural ideals.
Yeah, not what she expected.
He's not only a man, but he's in a different culture.
Yeah, right. Does she have anything else coming into this that you guys see? Yeah. Yeah, she might be searching for a mutual purpose as well. And if you go further on in her story, I think she has some real trust issues with men going on, as well as trust issues with Jews. You don't think I'm worth anything, I'm a Samaritan. She knows that, and she's pretty accurate. Most of the Jews, that was their opinion. But Christ isn't the average Jew, so that wasn't his opinion. And Jesus answered and said unto her, "If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest ask of him, and he would have given thee living water." Oh, mutual purpose. I have something to give you. There's a reason you should be engaging in this conversation. The woman saith unto him, "Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle?" Is he greater? He is. Does he say, "Yep, I am"? No. He's maintaining safety. So he recognizes she's still challenging safety. She's still saying, are you really that great? Am I really in a safe place? Do you really have something to offer me? Because I don't see how you're going to give it to me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up unto everlasting life. Mutual purpose. I have something to give you. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me of this water that I thirst not. So you'll notice he took a lot of patience there in establishing safety. But once it was safe, she was ready to change. So you notice safety is violated. Now what do you do? And I've been in this position before. As a TGL, I've been having the conversation with an instructor about you need to do announcements. And the instructor's like getting defensive and upset. And you're like, oh goodness, now what do I do, right? So there's a couple of things that you can do when you notice that safety is at risk. One of the nice things, I drove here, one of the nice things about driving here is you get into Idaho and the speed limit goes up. And you can drive faster and get further. Really nice. In Oregon, we're just starting to get speed limits going up, not as good as Oregon, as Idaho and Utah have. And so this was kind of an issue in our state for a long time, and they would bring it to Congress, they'd introduce it, let's raise the speed limit, and Congress would not pass it. So I saw this news report that they somewhat cleverly did after it failed again. And the news reporters, what they did is they followed these people home, they clocked how fast they were driving, and then they confronted all the ones that were speeding. Now, I learned something really great as I was watching this that I will never forget, because this was years ago that I saw this news report. It just made such an impression. And so they'd go and they'd confront them and they'd say, oh, that wasn't me, or just go away, or they came up with all sorts of creative ways of avoiding what was going on. And the last lady that they went to, boy, she earned my respect. They showed her, look, you were speeding, and she said, oh my goodness, shame on me. I should not have been doing that, and I need to apologize to all my constituents, and you are right, that is wrong. I should not have done that. Now, she had been in the wrong, speeding, and unlike everybody else, she turned around and admitted it and apologized. And it did three things. Number one, cleared her conscience right up, so they could hold a conversation. She had no baggage. Okay. Number two, it took all the wind out of their sails. They had nothing at all to attack. So when you're in these conversations and you've made a mistake, people can get stuck on your mistake and they can't look at themselves anymore. But if you admit that mistake, they don't stay stuck. And then the third thing that it did is that it gave me a tremendous amount of respect for her, because I could see that she was open to making changes. And had she been in my area, I would have voted for her in a heartbeat. So when we do wrong, we need to apologize. Now keep in mind, if you're having one of those crucial conversations and you haven't done something wrong, don't apologize. Not because you need to not apologize, but because it can be confusing for the person you're communicating with. Don't say, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to talk to you about that. No. But if you've done something wrong, own up, apologize, so that you can move on. But you don't want to confuse them with needless apologies. So if you haven't done something wrong, then what do? Contrast. I am not looking to and say the part that you're afraid they're afraid you're doing. And then what I really want is, I'm not looking to put your job in jeopardy. I just want to make sure we get this addressed so that we don't have to go there. So the part they're concerned about and the real reason, what's in it for them? And establish mutual purpose. You're trying to achieve something that they've got to also want. So what's in it for them? Let them know. Christ built mutual purpose before proposing change in other people's lives. So he said to Peter, Peter, lovest thou me more than these? Talking about the fish he'd been fishing for. And he said unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. he saith unto him, Feed my lambs. He did that 3 times, and what did it do? Peter said, oh, if I want to show the Lord I love him, and I do, then I'm going to go and minister. So he built a mutual purpose, and Peter went from fishing to preaching the rest of his life. So I want you guys to practice with a partner. If you need to move, to find somebody, do that. And we've got this scenario. You are an OCR. Your students are struggling with exams because the questions are a level above what is taught in the lecture materials. The course lead has worked very hard on the course and is not overly eager to redo the work. What mutual purpose could you have with this instructor? And what contrasting statement could you share to establish safety? And remember that I don't want to, I do want to. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. When we're done, I'm going to have a stop sign come up so you'll know that we're coming back to it. Okay? So go ahead. Okay, so we're going to come back up front. Sorry to pull you away from the great conversations that you're having. What kind of mutual purposes did you guys come up with?
Students learn, right, and not feel frustrated with what's going on.
Excellent, yeah. Okay, same sort of thing. Okay. So what kind of contrasting statements did you come up with? Any? Yeah.
Just kind of like, I don't want to compromise the integrity of the course or lower the standards, but I do want to provide students with tools for success and not.
Excellent, yeah, good.
Another one too that you can say would be, I don't want to put an unreasonable burden on you. Because honestly,
That's what a lot of it's about.
some course leads
Yeah.
have no time designated. Some of you are probably aware of this, but it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
So maybe you could say, I'm aware of that, but I do want to, give the students a good experience, and then you could talk about what can we do, Maybe you could volunteer for a development contract, and I could go through,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That's true too. Okay. Can I have you do a second one? You are a TGL. One of your instructors is not participating in teaching group meetings or posts. They claim to be too busy with teaching to participate. What mutual purpose could you have with this instructor? And what contrasting statement could you share to establish safety? Let's go ahead and go on that one. Okay, thank you. So what kind of mutual purpose did you find there? Yeah.
Just that we wanted them to be the best instructor they could be. Like, I'm sure that we both want them that same thing, that we both want excellence in instruction.
Good, good, yeah. Okay, what about contrasting statements? What do you say in this situation?
So when we first started talking about this, we recognized that we started the sentence, I don't want to add to your plate. But in essence, we really are adding to their plate. So we talked about,
Yeah.
let's be really honest about this.
Yeah.
So I don't want to excessively add to your plate, or I don't
There
want
you
to
go.
make this a large portion of your time. And what time you do use, we want to make it very specific, and we don't want you to waste time doing this activity, but we do want you to be involved. And we know it's going to take time, but let's make your effort worthwhile.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have one as well?
I think this statement would depend on why this instructor is not participating. Is it they don't have time or they don't find the information useful? Because whatever their kind of issue with it would, this sentence would be different. So, I don't want you to be wasting your time, or I don't want you to, or your time to be taken away from family. But
Yeah.
I think you draw back to, but I do want you to either learn this information or want you to help the others.
Yeah.
Because we said you could invite them to present at these things or to come up with a topic or maybe find a way
That works for them.
that works for them.
Yeah. So yours might be along the lines of, let's figure out what works for you and benefits you. And you're getting into something else, which is, although the instructor says they're too busy teaching to participate, there might be other reasons that we need to explore, and we'll talk about how to do that.
I like the way Sister Powell, she was our TGL in this scenario. The way she handled, first she asked why I wasn't participating. Then she explained the benefits of participation. Something that playing the instructor, I pretend I had no idea that could help.
Yeah.
That I had worked a whole whopping 10 hours that week. It was too much. So
Yeah.
it was so I thought that was a really good way of doing like the Savior did.
Yeah.
Draw it back to, that's good, but this is better, and here's why.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. And that established mutual purpose for you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So they warn in this book, be careful for 3 clever stories, not only from the people you're communicating with, but also look at yourself and see if these are coming from you. Because as they were talking about in the last session, sometimes we're not totally honest with ourselves, and so we figure out ways to kind of keep from being honest with ourselves. And these 3 clever stories are, I'm a victim, it's not my fault. Or, you're a villain and out to get me. Or, it couldn't be helped. This is just inevitable. I had no power to change it, and I won't have any power to change it in the future. So sometimes these stories are true. If you get held up at gunpoint by someone, they're a villain, you're a victim, and it probably couldn't have been helped, right? But more often, we use these to get ourselves off the hook emotionally so that we don't have to face the role we played. So when we don't admit to our mistakes, we obsess about others' faults, our innocence, and our powerlessness to do anything other than what we're already doing. And that doesn't allow for change. So we need to be honest with ourselves, and if we see these in other people, we need to also redirect that. So what do? How do we undo them when they're going on? Instead of a victim, become an actor. Ask, am I pretending not to notice my role in the problem? And we can also ask our teachers a little more tactfully the same sort of thing. Is there maybe a small role that you played in this? If so, what would that be? Turn villains into humans. There are a few people out there that are just completely crazy. There was one person Christ stood in front of and said nothing because he was dealing with someone who was a true villain. But most people are human. And so we ask, why would a reasonable, rational, and decent person act this way? And then use that curiosity to figure out where they're coming from and realize you may not understand where they're coming from yet. And then go from being helpless to being able. Ask, What do I want for me? What do I want for others? What do I want for this relationship? And what would I do right now if I really wanted that? And that'll put you back in the frontal lobe of problem solving. Let's figure this out. So what is the safest path to share a concern? Of course, we want to maintain safety right from the start and not threaten it to begin with. So how do you do that? And the best thing to do is start with facts, not the opinions, and this means you want to start with the facts. I noticed that 30% of the students are failing this test, and I'm wondering what's going on. Or I went in and reviewed your course, and I'm looking for feedback, and I didn't find any in week 1. I went under every category. Am I missing something? So you want to start with the facts, then move to your story. I saw something, I observed something, and this is what I'm telling myself. And that story can really vary. 30% of them failed the test. I think they're not doing the work. 30% of them failed the test. I think the test is too hard. 30% of them failed the test. Maybe it's keyed wrong. You know? We can tell ourselves all kinds of stories. So just recognize when you tell yourself that story, it's going to lead you to action, but it might not be correct. So share with them. I like this one book I read that said, and then I told myself, because it owns it right up. I told myself this. I could be wrong, but this is what I told myself. And then once you've told them, and when you're doing this, do it with confidence, but not with pride or anything. Don't come in excusing yourself right away for what you did, but just say, this is what I'm observing, and I'm told myself this. But ask for their paths. Do I see that right? What are you seeing in this situation? Can you show me in your class where you've got feedback? Can you tell me why you think they're struggling with this? Get their paths. Make sure you're prepared to hear that it might be different than your own, because it might. And whether it's right or wrong, if they don't contribute that, they're not going to be as open to having you contribute what you have to contribute. So you need to see where they're coming from to properly address it. So they may have said, I'm too busy teaching, but maybe you'll find out in the end there's something going on at home and at work, and they are just at their wits' end. And so really they didn't have it to give at that moment. So ask their story, explore it, and we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. And when you're doing this, that's the what to do. The how to do it, talk tentatively. When people see you're open to being wrong, they're willing to accept that you're right. But if you come in saying, I'm right, you're wrong, they shut down. They won't listen to anything that you have to say because they feel that their respect is already in danger and they're not safe. So I was concerned that maybe this seems to show that perhaps, and also with this case, don't take it to the other extreme of, I'm sure I'm wrong, but don't do that either. That can be confusing. But choose that middle ground of, I'm open to this not being the case. And then if you're good enough at that, they'll often say, no, I think you might have that right, if you really do have it right. But if you say, come as mom and dad shaking the finger at them, they're less likely to accept that there's something wrong. Encourage testing. Invite a different view and mean it. Is there something I am missing? Is there a better way? I think we should change the course in this way, but maybe that's not the best way to do it. Do you have another way that solves this problem that would be better? And mean it. And what am I failing to consider? Is there a piece that I'm missing here? Be open to hearing that. Yes, please.
When you talk about bringing the facts forth, we have so much more information that's in your hands now, as some instructors. And I think the probability of you having a story that is likely to be correct is much higher than it used to be. So find out what those resources are that are available to you and use them to your best benefit.
Yeah,
That applies for course situations, not necessarily the second scenario that we went through, with trying to work with it.
Yeah, being able to compare our courses with on-campus courses and compare our courses with past terms courses and compare instructors has made a world of difference because our conclusions are a lot more accurate.
Or for example, if you dove into the student
Mhm.
across all sections as the OCR, about what they're saying about exams before you had the conversation with the course lead, that could potentially make a difference.
Yeah, 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 very true. Very true. Thank you. So keep in mind when you're having these conversations with other people that our path to action kind of does this. We see or hear something, we observe it, these are the facts, right? And then we have our internal response. We tell a story, and the story leads to emotions. And our internal response can vary widely. So the instructor is not showing up at meetings. What story could we tell? We could say, maybe they don't understand the importance. They're total failures. What in the world are they doing here, right? They don't like me. We could tell that story. We could tell they're irresponsible. We could tell they're overcommitted to other things. We could come up with probably 1,000 responses. So our story tells not only our past experience, our own history, all these things come into play as to what story we tell. And then that leads to emotions. And then from those emotions, we decide to act. And the actions you take really depend on the story and emotions that happened before. And when you hold that crucial conversation and you're inviting the other person to participate, we're often seeing that from the other person. We're seeing their actions, their defensiveness, or their willingness to be open, or whatever. We're seeing their actions, but we may not know what happened here.
Is there anything that you can address about prefacing or prepping an individual for the crucial conversation? So we've had days or weeks to prepare for our side of the conversation, and then we immediately interact with another person, but they don't have the luxury of having time to think about what they bring to the conversation.
So I see Bonnie has part of your answer.
James Patterson talked about this once where he said that if you're going to have a conversation with someone where you know that you're going to have to bring something up, you kind of give them, hey, can we have a call this week? And during our call or beforehand, can you maybe take a look at this discussion or this thing or whatever? And then we can discuss it during the phone call. So that way they're prepared to know what you're going to bring up. And then even when you're doing course visit feedback, you're kind of telling them, this is what we're saying, let's talk about it now. So they already know what you're going to talk to them about in the phone call. So kind of giving them a heads up what you're going to discuss is a little helpful.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. So that they don't come in with all sorts of scary stories before they show up. That's really useful to prep them beforehand. I do a lot of mine I do too. I do the course review, and at the bottom, praise everything they're doing right, and then say there's this one area below expectations. We need to meet and talk about it and give them a little bit there, and then send out an additional email. What's a good time? And this is what we're going to be discussing. So when we explore other paths, how do you do this when the person is shutting down or getting fired up when they're talking to you? So you're seeing the action, and the action is fight or flight. They're trying to get out of there. How do you not respond in kind? Because I think that's the natural man. Oh, you're getting upset. Okay, I need to fire up or shut down too. So be ready to listen with sincerity and curiosity. Ask yourself, what was their path before? That brings you to the frontal lobe as opposed to fight or flight. When you see other people attacking or hiding, something caused that. If you get behind the cause of that, you can establish safety. And if you establish safety, you can address the issues you're there to address. But without that safety, you're never going to get there. So go in with curiosity instead of defensiveness. Let's figure out how you got here and how we can get you on track for what we're really trying to do with this relationship for you and for me in the situation. And remember that the cure to silence or violence is understanding it and establishing safety, not responding in kind. Because the minute you respond in kind, then they say, oh, my safety really is going to be violated. I had the right reaction here. I need to protect myself. Be patient. even if they had fight or flight hitting them and then you redirected it and now you've established common purpose, you've established safety, the hormones that come out with fight or flight are still in their system. And so they're going to have a harder time processing. They're going to have a harder time using their frontal lobe as opposed to going into the emotional attacking just because of the biochemistry of human beings. So be patient. Remember, you're often joining their path to action at the end. They already told the story that led to the emotions that caused them to react as you're observing. So use your curiosity to figure out what their story was. So tools for this exploring, you can ask. That's probably the most obvious one. I'd like to know how you see this. Don't worry about hurting my feelings. I want to know what you think. Make sure that they know that this is genuine. And when you ask them, guess what you're doing? You're making them engage their frontal lobes and pulling them out of fight or flight. So you want them to not be yes or knowing. You want them to actually be addressing complicated problems so that they will go up into that more advanced way of thinking. And if that isn't working, if the asking isn't working, then move on to mirroring. This is when you see words that don't match actions. I think we see this with teenagers quite a bit. They'll say one thing and their actions are saying something entirely different. So when that happens, mirror what you're seeing. Kind of tentatively mirror it. So you're saying you are willing, but your tone suggests you may not want to do this. Am I reading that right? That's the sort of mirroring that you would do. Or you can paraphrase when they are willing to share. Listen, try to understand what they're saying, and then paraphrase it back. Number one, to make sure you have it right, because sometimes you don't understand what they're saying. But number two, because then they understand that you get what they're saying. Because sometimes they're talking and they're thinking, oh, she's not getting this. I'm saying it, but she's not listening. So when we paraphrase, it lets them know. And this doesn't mean that you agree with them, but it does let them know that you understand what they're saying. Or if you don't, allows them to clarify so that you do understand what they're saying. And then sometimes you can be in a situation where you know everybody in the room has something to say, but none of them are saying it because it's uncomfortable and they don't want to say it. So if you can't get them with these other three, the last resort tool is to prime. So on the old water pumps, you'd have to pour water in before you could pump it out. Sometimes when you're in kind of the high tension situations, you got to pour water in before you can pump it out. So for example, I've made the suggestion to change discussion boards, but perhaps you think it's better the way it is, and changing is not a good idea. Now that might not be what they're thinking, but it gives them an opening to let them know, I'm open to hearing I'm wrong. And this is what I think you might be thinking, and if not, then they can clarify it. If they are thinking that, then you're getting enough into the pool of meaning to start discussing. Is it good enough? Do we really need to not do this term? Right? So you've shared, they've shared, now what? Now you do your ABCs. Agree. So they've studied disagreements and they've found the majority of what we're talking about we agree on. If you agree on everything, start with that. Sounds like we're on the same page. Thanks. We're agreeing. And if you're not entirely on the same page, look at everything you do agree about. We agree the students are important. We agree that we need to be contacting them and getting that communication. So find everything you agree with so that they feel, okay, we're on the same side on some things. We're not just adversaries running up against each other. And then build. If you don't agree on everything, say, okay, this is what we agree on, and that makes sense, but we need to also look at this. What about this part of it? So, for example, I agree that they need to learn what's covered here, and I'm okay with the requirement. It makes sense. I can see you've worked really hard creating it. Thank you. We are fortunate to have your help. However, the test average on the exam that follows is 33%. When I see that, I tell myself, we're still missing a critical piece of the preparation for these students. Do you have ideas that will help the students raise this average? So notice, we agree that we need to make it hard. A lot of the instructors will come in, oh, you just don't understand this. It needs to be a hard class. No, I agree with you on all of that, but we still need to do more. So that's a build. And then compare. When you differ, just totally differ, compare. So I've had people tell me, I don't think I need discussion boards because I send out emails. Or I don't need discussion announcements because I send out emails. And so a comparison there would be, you feel that these announcements are frivolous and don't need to be there. But in my training, I've learned that maybe we do need to have them and that they serve a purpose. Let's talk about what that purpose could be. So you're comparing how you differ, and then you go into why you differ. And sometimes you'll find out your differing is wrong and they were right. But you're opening that up to just this specific part needs to be addressed. And then move to action. Most of you guys are good at this part, and it's kind of, we've put it into the system in a lot of ways lately, and so it makes it easy. But who's going to do what needs to be done? Use their names, make sure it's specific. And what are they doing? Clearly spell it out. If you leave it really general, you may not get what you want. And it's not because they're not doing it, they just can't read your mind. By when? So assignments without deadlines are far better at producing guilt than stimulating action. I loved that quote because it's true. I've been in that position. Oh, I needed to do that. The one I needed to get it done. And then follow-up. How will follow-up happen? This is especially important when somebody is like fixing something they've been doing wrong. Let them know before they even go forward to do what they're going to do, I'm going to be checking up on you so that it isn't, and then in the middle of it, we get the surprise attack of checking up on you. If you establish it from the front that this is how we're going to handle it, it's not a personal thing. It's just this is the procedure. And then document your work. Send out afterwards. This is what we agreed to do in the course. The course lead's going to do this. The OCR is going to do this. The course designer is going to do this. And these things are going to be handled this fourth way. So Neil L. Anderson said, "Whom the Lord calls, the Lord qualifies." And sometimes as we're serving the Lord and we go forth as OCRs or TGLs, we feel inadequate to what we have to do. When Christ was on the earth, he fed 5,000 people with 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. And there was enough and to spare when he did that, and that's history. But for us, when we come into these situations and we say, I'm inadequate, if we bring what we do have, whatever little that is, and put it in Christ's hands, he will make us enough and to spare for what we're doing. So we need to keep in mind we're not doing this alone. And he is capable of making us more than we are because he cares about the children we're ministering to. And he cares about our students. And he cares about those we're interacting with. And I bear you my testimony of that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.